generations. And now, the power of two restores the one.
We got a bidet! Hey everybody, and welcome back for another video. In today's video, I'm going to tell you about the new movie, Heretic, and what I think about it. I'm going to give it a rating, and then I will go into more detail about what happened in the movie. So, I'm going to kick it off with some first impressions here. So, I was very excited to go and see this movie. I saw it was an A24 film. I thought Hugh Grant was going to be a very interesting villain character, and this idea where we have these two religious girls going door to door and inquiring on somebody that said that they were interested in, and then he kind of tries to flip this religious script on them. Seemed like a pretty interesting plot. And so, like I said, I was very excited. And unfortunately, I mean, the movie was good. Don't get me wrong. It was a good movie, but I feel like it underperformed a little bit. And the reason why is because I feel like this movie was kind of set up to be, because based on the trailer, he was saying, if you want to leave, you got to go through one of these doors. And one says belief, one says disbelief, and it has to do with their religion and stuff. And I kind of got the vibe that it was going to be kind of Saw-like in a way, not the grotesque per se, but like going through trials of testing their religion and their faith. Now, is that part of the movie? Yes. But I also think it wasn't enough of the movie, and there wasn't enough of said trials per se. Of course, I'll talk a lot more about that in detail when we get there. But I feel like the movie had a lot of exposition dumps and not enough things that really move the movie along. I kind of feel like this also was a very slow burn. But at the same time, I feel like there's other slow burn movies that have been more effective. And I think what makes it more effective is I feel like there should have been more moments in this film where it really took you off guard. For instance, there wasn't really anything where I was like, whoa, what did he just do? Or whoa, we went there kind of a thing. Aside from the fact of him trying to test, their religious faith, because, that can be uh, very iffy for some people. We're all really set in our faith and we don't want people to tell us otherwise. And so, there is that aspect to it that creates a lot of tension between these characters. But as an audience viewer, trying to escape my world and then just be a part of this one and wanted to see some crazy things from A24 because I know they can definitely do it. I feel like this one just wasn't quite there. I was kind of hoping for, somewhere along the line of like Midsummer type things where I was, blown away about what was around the next corner or what was really happening with the plot. I feel like it was also kind of predictable because I was predicting a couple of things along the way of he's trying to do these things that make them uh, not believers of their own religion, and he's trying to trick them with different things. And so there's a couple of things that I picked up on, and I wish there was a little bit more complex, so to speak. But again, the movie was not bad. The movie was good. And Hugh Grant did a great job as the villain in here. His name was Mr. Reed. I also think the two lead actresses were great. Sophia Thatcher played Sister Barnes, and Chloe East played Sister Paxton. They're both very, very good at their roles. And there's only one other, I would say, major, but very, very little of him in this film is Topher Grace's character, Elder Kennedy. And essentially, his character is just that, he's the one that's in charge of the church, and he realizes that the the two girls haven't made it back yet, and so he starts to wonder what's going on. That's basically his plot. So not really a spoiler, just it's interesting to have, I would say, a decent sized name to play that role when the role really didn't have a whole lot to the structure of the character. Uh, but yeah, so I thought it was a good movie, but at the same time, I feel like it was a little maybe I overhyped it, but in a way I think it was a little misleading with how maybe demented or twisted that the movie's gonna be just based on the trailer. And so I don't know. And also being from A24, I was hoping for a little bit more. So if I were to give this movie a rating, I would give it probably a solid 7 out of 10. Is definitely above average. Like I said, I was hoping for a little bit more out of it. We had solid performances, but I think there could have been a little bit more done in the writing that would have made this movie a little bit better. But that's my opinion. So I am going to transition to spoilers here. So this movie, like we know from the trailers, about these two, I believe, Jehovah's Witnesses. They're Mormons, and they're, if I got that wrong, I apologize. But they are going around, doing their job, and somebody inquired to actually have them come to their house to talk to them about their Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And so they go to this house. It's, a really nice house. It's got a long driveway. They actually take their bikes and lock them along the fence because there's a really nice fence. And when they get to the door, of course, Mr. Reed answers the door, and the girls are trying to explain, "Hey, we saw you inquired. Um, we would love to talk to you about this stuff, but we can only be in the house if there's a woman present." And so Mr. Reed, you know, tells them that, "Oh, don't worry, my wife, does she count? She's not in the room, but she's making a pie in the kitchen. Is that cool?" And they're like, "Yeah, totally fine." And so they go in the house, they sit down with Mr. Reed, and they talk for a little bit, and then he goes and gets some refreshments for them, goes in the kitchen, reassures them that, he'll go and get his wife because she has to be present in the room. Comes back, all he has is the drinks and a candle. And so he lights the candle and he offers them some drinks and tells them that, his wife's embarrassed and a little shy, doesn't want to come out quite yet. And so she's, back there making the pie. And so they're conversating, he's asking them different personal questions. And there's even this point where he says, "Can you guess what kind of pie that my wife is making?" And the girl guesses blueberry. And he's like, "Right, you're exactly right. It's blueberry." And so he starts to ask them some more harder questions about religion and stuff. One of them being about what is the girl's opinions on a man having multiple wives? And, they're kind of uncomfortable about it. And basically, the further they get into their conversation, the girls want to leave. And so they remember that they have their jackets. In the jacket pocket is the key to their bike. And so, they have to find a way to get their jackets eventually because Mr. Reed took the jackets and put them somewhere. Maybe a clothes or a coat closet or somewhere else in the house. And so he goes back to check on the pie again, you know, and this is the girls are left alone. They try the front door. They notice that it won't open. There's no lock that unlocks it. And so they, turn around. They're just standing there and they are talking to Mr. Reed saying, "Hey, we gotta go." And he's like, "Oh, can you at least please, come back here and, have a piece of pie and meet my wife and then we'll let you go." And he's like, "Okay, sure." So the girls they start to go back there, but um, Sister Barnes actually takes out her phone and kind of tries to do a fake phone call to, or reach out to the elder because, they're very uncomfortable and they feel like this is a situation they can't get out of. The door's locked, and so, it's kind of sending out an SOS. But there's no service. So they can't. So they head back and they end up in this room, this big open room, which is the room we see from the trailer where he mentions the doors, the belief and disbelief. And when we're in this room, it's when things start to turn for the worse, right? He's starting to show his real character that, he's challenging their faith. He's giving off this idea that there's all these different religions in the world, but there's only one true religion, and all the other ones are fake iterations of it. And I thought it was pretty interesting because the way that he explains this iteration situation is that he brings out a game of Monopoly. And he's talking about Monopoly, and he's talking about how there's other iterations of Monopoly. But even before Monopoly, which is like this very popular thing that us as society nowadays, play, and myself, I collect Monopolies. Like it's a big thing nowadays. But supposedly there was a game before Monopoly. I forget what it was called. It was Landlord something. And this game was essentially what Monopoly was. Even some of the spaces were the exact same. And it was created by a woman way back when in the 1900s, like early 1900s. And the person that made Monopoly copied it and made their version. And that person made tons of money while the woman never even got credit for it. And so, what Mr. Reed is trying to convey here is that there was one central religion, and then all these other ones like Christianity, um, Muslim, Catholic, whatever it is all just inspired by whatever this first one was. And he's very secretive about what it is. And so he tells the girls, if you want to leave my house, you have to go through one of these doors. And it's either belief or disbelief. And they decide to go down the belief door. One of the things that's important here is as the girls are kind of, talking to him and he's walking around the room and doing his monologue, at one point they do go to their jackets that are sitting there on the couch and they put them on and they notice that the key is in the wrong jacket. And so they're like, what the heck? And also, they find this, I think it's a letter opener. It's a very, very sharp tool that's on the ground, and they pick it up and they slip it in their jacket. And they decide, there's this code word that they're going to use if, they need to try to stab him or attempt to attack him. So after all this is said and done, they go down and down, they go through the belief door, which they realize is stairs to a basement. Both doors are stairs to the basement. So no matter which one they went to, they would end up in the same room. So they go down the belief door. They get down there. He shuts the door behind them, and they're in this big open room with water dripping from the ceiling, and there's a table there, and this woman comes out. It says she's a prophet, and she sits down at the table with a pie, and she eats the pie. And Mr. Reed is explaining that there is this thing in the pie where it'll kill her, but then it'll bring her back within a couple of minutes, and she'll be able to tell us what happens in the afterlife. And so the girls witness this prophet um, eat the pie and die, and then they notice that somebody is knocking at the door, and it's actually the elder Kennedy. He's realized that they haven't come back yet, and he's out searching, going door to door of houses that, you know, the girls should have been going to, and trying to check in if these people have seen the girls or not. And so he gets to Mr. Reed's house. The girls notice this, and they take this opportunity to try to scream and yell, saying, "Hey, we need help." It doesn't work because they're so far back in the house, and Mr. Reed has closed so many doors. And what the girls do notice is that on the rug from the other room, which they can barely reach to, is the box of matches. And so they pull this so that they can get the box. And what their plan is that they're going to try to smoke him out because in that room down below where the woman is and the table and the dripping water, there's a pipe there that goes up to the main room that they were at just a second ago with the Monopoly board game and whatnot, that he is talking to them through. And so they're gonna light something on fire and they're gonna put it in the pipe and they're gonna try to smoke him out. So they're trying to do that, and the woman from the table they notice is in a different position. Like her face is sideways, as opposed to face down in the pie like it landed. And so the woman gets up from the table and goes over to the girls and says some stuff. But at the very end, she says it's all a lie. And so Mr. Reed comes back down and basically has another monologue with the girls talking about belief, what's real, what's not. And during this process, eventually he swipes at Sister Barnes's throat and she starts bleeding and she falls to the ground. And he goes over to her and he's telling Sister Paxton that, that one of you has been lying this whole time. And on Sister Barnes's arm is this little scar, and what that is it's a form of birth control that they're not supposed to have as part of their religion. And he cuts her arm open, he digs it out, and he shows it to Sister Paxton, and it's a pretty graphic scene. But through all of this, he's kind of telling her, bits and pieces more about what's true and what's not. And there's one he tells her about, um, because the Sister Paxton confronts him about something's wrong here, like something is off. And she basically explains how she knows how everything is working. One, uh, the candle. That was the blueberry, not an actual pie. Um, when the excuse me, um, she realizes that the person that was at the table is not the same person. It had to have been somebody that moved while they were distracted by the door upstairs. And he explains to her basically, he's kind of insinuating that she's right and that there's something else here in the room. There's another passage to go to the door. And so she sees the dripping, and if it's been dripping for years and years or whatever, you'd think there's more of a puddle, but there isn't. So um, she moves the table and finds out that there's mud under there. She scrapes it away and there's a door. And she takes the key that she has um, from the her coat, which I believe that's what Mr. Reed used to cut the other girl's throat. But she opens up this door, this hatch, essentially. She goes down it, and he tells her, like, well, if this switcheroo thing is happening, then there's got to be a dead body down there. And so when she goes down there, she in fact does see a dead body. So it's telling her that um, even though he's trying to portray some sort of religious miracle that's happening with death and people coming back from the dead, he was faking it. He was doing what he needed to do to make her and Sister Barnes at the time a believer in this religion. Because remember, it's kind of like this mysterious religion that he's talking about. There's this one thing that started it all, and then everything else is a copy of it. So she goes down the stairs and she gets to a door that's locked, and the lock that's on the door is the lock that was to their bikes. So she knows that the bikes had to have been moved at some point because the lock's not there, and he got the lock, right? So she unlocks the lock, and there's this room that she comes to that has what they look like a bunch of pack and plays in a way that are locked, or cages, so to speak. It's all these women, and they're all terrified, they're scared looking. And Mr. Reed comes in the room, and from what I gather, these are all the women that do the swapping business, right? Like one of them dies, the next one swaps that person out, and they're now the living person. And then that the next person dies, and they swap out. And basically, what Mr. Reed reveals to Sister Paxton is that the one true religion is control. It's not all these other things that people believe in and have all these books about. It's control. And then control was made through other iterations like religion. So like how the The landlord game started as like the Monopoly and then evolved into the classic Monopoly and then other iterations of Monopoly. That's what he's saying is happening with control. It's what spawned religion. And so through this monologue, eventually she uses that sharp object to stab him in the mouth or under the throat. Uh, she also gets stabbed at one point. She tries running away from him, and she finds this other secret door that he could use to get down from the room that had the Monopoly games, the little library area. There's a door that connected there, and then there's other doors. There's doors that connect all over the place, basically. And she found her way back up there, uh, and eventually kicked out a vent and made it out of the house. He eventually died choking on his own blood. Uh, oh, no, he did not die from choking on his own blood. Excuse me. I thought he was going to. They go back up to the room where the table was and the girl swapped out and her dead friend is laying there. And uh, the guy is Mr. Reed is about to kill Sister Paxton when he gets hit in the side of the head by a board with nails, which is something that the girls found earlier on when they first entered this room. And we find out, and I don't understand this, but we find out that Sister Barnes like had one last bit of life in her, and this is like the last thing that she did before she died, because as soon as she hit him and killed him, she fell over and died. It's not my favorite part of the film. I don't believe that she should have been the one to do that. Um, I just don't believe that she would have been alive after what happened. She had her throat slit and she was bleeding out, right? Um, but after he dies from that and then she passes away, then Sister Paxton eventually just finds her way out of the house by searching through the house. Um, the reason why they couldn't get out the front door is because Mr. Reed had the door set on a timer so that after so often the door would automatically lock and you couldn't unlock it from like normally walking up to the door and unlocking it. There was a thing behind the light switch that he could maneuver and, set it and unset it to lock and unlock if he wanted to do it manually, but they didn't know about this. So that's why she eventually went out a furnace or a furnace airway, whatever you want to call that, vent. Um, the kind of small little cool thing is during the movie when they were talking, Sister Barnes had told Sister Paxton that if she died, she would want to be a butterfly and that she wouldn't land on someone's head. And she wouldn't land on someone's arm. She would land on their hand. And so as Sister Paxton gets out of the house, she has a butterfly land on her hand, and that's kind of a um, insinuating that that was Sister Barnes landing on her hand and maybe, telling her that it's okay. And then the movie ends there. So some of the things I thought were interesting is I thought it was really interesting how Mr. Reed explained what he was trying to tell them without telling them because he was really playing on the fact that they are told to believe these things because they're being shown XYZ, but there's also, in his opinion, the people behind the curtain, right? How he basically had someone die and they did the switcheroo, and then it seemed like someone came back from the dead and can talk about the afterlife. And so this is kind of how he's trying to manipulate them. Also, how he said, his wife was in the back making a pie. They took that for granted and just went in the house anyways. And they thought there was a pie. Really, it was a candle. So there's a lot of playing around with what do they really believe and understand to be true, and also what is he trying to lead them to believe. So I thought that was an interesting concept. I really liked how he explained without giving it away with the Monopoly game. Very interesting way to do it. But I feel like the movie falls a little short just because I feel like they should have went through a couple more trials. Um, watching the trailer, I thought that room that they were in with the belief and disbelief, I thought that was going to kick things off with this trial scenario. And as in they go through the door and it kicks it off. But really, it was in that room that started the whole thing. And then the first real room that they went to and they, witnessed something was the room with the woman in it, the basement. And then there was only one other room. So there was two rooms that they actually experienced on their own, so to speak, or found on their own. There's three total, but again, I wish there was more of a sequence of things happening where there's a couple of different things that they were supposed to encounter and question, and maybe their beliefs in religion is what prevails through all of this. But really, it was just the girls found out about it. They one of the girls made it out, stabbed him, and left. Um, Yeah. So that's kind of why I think it falls a little short, just because I wanted a little bit more. But of course, I mean, I totally understand the slow burn, and I mean, the candle kind of does picture or send an interesting um, metaphor or analogy or whatever it is about the film, because that's what it is. It's a slow burn, just like a candle, just like the blueberry candle that's even on a poster. So. They had a lot of exposition in the movie. Yeah, I feel like I'm just rambling at this point and repeating the same things, but that's kind of why I gave it a 7. It's a good movie, but I wanted a little bit more. And I think if they would have went a little bit further, maybe even pushed the envelope a little bit further on the whole your religion is fake kind of a thing. I really want them to push that boundary. I feel like they went to the boundary and they really could have just smashed through the door and, really went with it. So, uh, that's my thoughts on Heretic. And so, if you enjoy this type of video, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Sarah will be back for some other videos. We got Moana 2 coming out, we got Wicked coming out, and Lion King coming out next month. So, we'll definitely be back here talking about all of those. Drops a like if you liked the video, and drops a comment letting us know your thoughts on Heretic. And then, as always, everybody, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.